I'm going to talk about U.S. health reform. Sadly, it appears that U.S. health reform has been diagnosed as dying a sad death once again, perhaps taking some politicians with it. And this seems like an astonishing development to many outside the United States, some within, since the United States has a reputation for the country where we spend more and get less. We spend the largest share of our GDP on health of any OECD country, considerably more, and yet we seem to get most of our measures of health, like life expectancy or infant mortality, is the middle of the pack at best, often like Eastern Europe. And perhaps the worst thing of all, we have this incredibly complex system of healthcare. This is a diagram of the healthcare system that leaves something like 15% of the population without any coverage and more with really poor coverage. So the real question is why, and then where do we head from here? And so one of the most important things to keep in mind as we do this is how big is the healthcare system in the United States? Well, the total spending on healthcare in the United States is roughly equal to the entire GDP of Great Britain. So what we're asking people to do, and if you really want to get more for less, it's like saying, let's transform the entire economy of Great Britain with one piece of legislation. You might think that would be a hard piece of legislation to pass. Moreover, we do have spectacular health care, as everyone knows in the United States, in much of the best, much of the innovation. And there's a reason why people from around the world come to the United States. And indeed, on certain measures, like cancer survival rates, we lead the world. But perhaps the biggest political reason why it's so hard to do anything is what I call the 80-80 rule. Turns out that roughly 80% of Americans think the healthcare system is broken, needs to be reformed, and 80% of Americans think their health coverage is pretty good, thank you very much. So this Politics 101, simplest thing of all, if you don't like this bill, you say they're going to screw up your healthcare. And so what this really means is dramatic, transformational changes are just not going to happen. So how are we going to make the existing market work better and try and get more for less? Let's start with health insurance. Biggest important fact to know in health insurance, 5% of the people account for half of the cost. If you're an insurance company and you can get rid of some of those expensive people, you're going to make money. If you don't, and somebody else does, you're going to go out of business. So we got to find a way to make the insurance market work better. You got to simplify it, you got to standardize it. Most importantly, you got to find a way to prevent people from risk selecting, make it illegal. But also, you've got to find a way for a market to actually work. Create an exchange where people can come together, learn about what's out there, and choose among a few choices. It works. It's been done in Massachusetts. This is actually something from the Massachusetts Exchange, and you can pick a silver or bronze plan. You can compare them easily, decide whether it's worth it. Furthermore, once you've got that, it's pretty easy to cover more people. You just decide how many you're going to pay for. The problem is it doesn't seem to save money. We can get more people covered, but we spend more for it. So how do we really deal with money? Consumers in this market are basically blind folks looking for a magic bullet, and too often doctors are stumbling around not entirely sure what's the most effective treatment. So information is part of what it's going to take both for healthcare system to work better and for a market to function. Start by, in this very complex system, making sure that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and you can have the information to create the procedures and not to reproduce tests or ideas or procedures in an unnecessary way. But even more importantly, once we've collected information about what you're doing, you can find out whether the treatment A seemed to work better than treatment B. And you can begin to use outcomes-based things to make a decision about what works. Finally, you can also rate then which hospitals are better or worse, and consumers can begin to make choices based on information. But the most important thing is probably incentives. We've got to go from a system that pays for procedures and move to one that pays for performance. And there are many different ways in which people have talked about doing this. Some involve capitation systems and HMOs. Others are saying, let's have something called accountable health organizations. How about paying a fixed amount for a disease and the providers get the same and they've got to treat them? How about not paying for unnecessary rehospitalizations? Whatever it is, it all amounts to the same thing. We've got to start rearranging the incentives that people face, the providers face, so that you make the most money by providing value per dollar, not just more. Ultimately, the holy grail for health reform is going to be bending the cost curve. We're not going to stop it from growing, but we can slow it. And maybe then we can get to a point where we have health reform and we still get to have our same politicians in office. Thank you very much.